So, gentlemen, could I just say to you, welcome our new player manager, Graham Souness.
Welcome back, Gordon.
You mentioned the name David Holmes to me. I think of modernisation. I think of revolution.
The commitment that he put into the club over that 2-3 year period was absolutely significant.
Everything he did and achieved at the club was for the benefit of the supporters.
It makes my the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, but just thinking about what we did and how enjoyable it was.
When they talk about the revolution that took place, people say the Graham Souness revolution, or the David Holmes revolution, or the this revolution. This was the Rangers revolution. Betty and I got on a plane and flew to Jersey. I met Lawrence. He said, how are you going to get the money? I said, well, I've got a business plan. I know how much I need to do what I want before the start of the next season. He said, well, what's it you want? I said, well, I need about $5.5 million. He says, are you going to go to the bank and get that? I said, yeah. I said, I've got a business plan for that, and I can cover that. It's a simple business plan. We're going to win the league in the first year. We're going to win a cup. We're going to get 2 rounds in Europe. And I was going to fill the 42,000 seats. And I said, if I get all that done, that'd be the $5.5 million. Well, he said, that sounds great. He says, you're going to sell that to the bank? And I said, yeah. He says, how are you going to tell the bank about that? I said, well, you haven't listened to the full business plan. He says, well, what's the full business plan? I says, I'm going to get one world-class player to put on the Rangers jersey, and I'm going to get a new manager. So he says, who are these 2 people that you're going to get? I says, oh, it's only one person. He says, who's that? I says, Graham Souness. I said, I'm going to get him as a player manager. I says, well, do you know Graham Souness? I says, no, I've never met him. He says, well, how are you going to get him? I says, I'm going to phone him and see if he wants to come. He says, is that not a bit ambitious? I says, well, if we don't have any ambition, we shouldn't be sitting here talking to each other. And we shook hands on it, and he never once, ever, after that, interfered with anything I wanted to do.
Graham Souness was one of the best players that I think Europe's ever seen, let alone Scotland and England. I mean, he could do everything. I mean, if he was on the market now in the current climate, he would be worth, at his peak, 130, 140, 150 million pounds, euros.
As hard as nails, but could play the game and had that arrogance about him that you would want in your own team.
I first met Graham as a young player in the Scottish national team when I was 20, when I made my debut for Scotland. Souness at that time and Kenny Dalglish were the 2 top players for the Scotland national team, so Souness being the captain, and someone that I always looked up to, and I thought, as I used to tell the younger players, pick someone in the dressing room to follow as a good example. And I always thought, even watching him play as a captain of Liverpool, he had won, I think, 3 European Cups. I just thought he's a good example to follow. He was playing for Sampdoria, at that time, and I just always followed him as an example. I thought he was a good example, and as a captain as well, I kind of picked up a lot of things off him.
I often got the impression that teams and opponents, when they saw him in the tunnel, that was the first tackle lost, because of his presence, because of that steel to him. And you looked at him and he was this very handsome, still is very handsome individual, and he looked like he was walking down the catwalk in Milan, and then he would step out at Anfield or Rome or wherever, and he would just dominate. He was a gladiator. Some of his tackling would have kept VAR busy nowadays, but he could play. So he was the best of all players, ball winner and ball user.
He started his playing career under Bill Nicholson at Spurs in the early 1970s, but he'd become frustrated at the lack of first team opportunities at White Hart Lane, so he'd moved to Middlesbrough. Whilst he was at Middlesbrough, he worked under Jack Charlton and was part of the Middlesbrough side that won promotion from the old second division in England. But he was starting to establish himself, and that earned him a move to Liverpool in 1978. He then became the fulcrum of that successful Liverpool side, the late 1970s and early 1980s. William was at Liverpool. He won 5 league championships, 5 league cups and 3 European cups. But after the third of those European Cup successes in 1984, Graham had actually captained Liverpool to that success. He decided to move on, and in the summer of 1984 he moved to Genoa and joined Sampdoria.
In September '85, just before the infamous and tragic World Cup qualifier in Cardiff, where Jock Stein had a heart attack and passed away, Souness was being interviewed for a TV series, Only a Game, and it was going to be broadcast as it was right before the Mexico World Cup in the May of 1986. And Souness is asked, "You've never played in Scotland. Why is that?" "I'm a professional footballer. I play football for money. I've always been able to earn more money outside of Scotland, so that's basically simple as that." Then there's a pause. "I would like to be player manager at Glasgow Rangers. I'd settle for that. So, Jock Wallace, watch out." Now, it's a joke, it's a throwaway line. No one hears about this really until he's already player manager, because the show wasn't broadcast until after that event.
Graham Souness was the player I wanted. And I sat for a long time and I thought about, I need a manager that can go and get Graham Souness. And I couldn't think of a manager that I could have got that would have brought Graham Souness from Italy to Glasgow. I couldn't think about that. And that's when I started thinking about, how will I get him? What's the attraction? And he was 32, so looking at Graham and just knowing him from afar, I could see that he would want to be in football after stopping playing. His whole life had been football. I thought, well, why not have him as player manager? And if that hadn't happened, I don't know what would have happened after that. But it was, I put everything, all my belief and all my business plan into getting Graham Souness.
Well, what I'd like to say is that as a club we are indeed honoured to welcome Graham to our club as one of the top players in Europe or in the world even. And he has played under Bill Nicholson, Bob Paisley, Jock Stein. So he comes with a great pedigree. So gentlemen, could I just say to you, welcome our new player manager, Graham Souness. Welcome to the club, Graham.
Welcome, Graham.
Well, it would sound corny if I said, I used to support them as a boy, but I did. I mean, I wanted to go into management, but obviously I didn't expect to land such a big job straight from, although I'm still playing, straight from more or less playing into management at this level. I wouldn't have taken the job if I felt it wasn't right for me, both professionally and in my mind. After speaking to them for the first time, I knew that I had to take the job.
David, I believe you're a personal fan of Graham Souness's.
Yeah, of course I am.
Hopefully that's the case in a year's time.
Can I just say that I hope he's right? Yes, I am a personal fan. I think he's got great character, great poise, and we're hoping for a great future.
The start of the season was pretty inconsistent. After losing the opening day fixture at Easter Road, Rangers had won 1-0 midweek against Falkirk, but then contrived to throw away a 2-goal lead at home to Dundee United the following Saturday. But by the end of August, Rangers had made a bit of a statement.
The harum-scarum mud bath of the 4-4 fixture that was Jock Wallace's last Old Firm game, I think, it couldn't be more different. I mean, the pace is huge, the tempo's huge, but Rangers look as if they're kind of above all of that. The football's great. This young midfield that he's entrusting, Souness is suspended, of course. It's Derek Ferguson and Ian Durrant that are running things. Kids.
Cooper. With Durrant with a chance, and he's done it! A brilliant goal by Durrant. Superbly struck. Brilliantly laid on by Davy Cooper. And if ever a team deserved a lead, it's Rangers.
A superb, unforgettable reverse pass from Davy Cooper, releasing Ian Durrant in goal.
It's not a thunder blaster, it's not blood and snotters. It's a moment of ballet amongst this cacophonous rock and roll that the Old Firm fixture is.
Rangers had played Boa Vista in a UEFA Cup tie. Souness had got injured, so there was a doubt over Souness's involvement in the final right the way up to kick-off. Ultimately, he didn't make it.
I thought we could win it, but I was apprehensive about if we didn't win it, what kind of effect that would have. You know, everything was on a high. Apart from the Hibs game, everything was on a high. And when we were leaving Ibrox to go in the special bus, I just wanted to go with Betty. And the second bus, Willie Wardle said, no. Tradition. You're the chief executive. You're Mr. Rangers. You've got to go in the first bus. I'll look after Betty. I'm kind of telling you the feeling I had for Willie Wardle. I think a lot of people underestimated him. He's a great man. So we're going across and we had the outriders, and I'm thinking to myself, good God, I mean, this wee boy for Bonnybridge, and he'll look at us now.
That was very important for Rangers. The first trophy of the season was up for grabs, and it was important that Rangers come out on top. They only had 3 new signings in the team. They had Woods, they had Nicholl, and they had Butcher. Souness never played that day. So it was basically the same team from the previous year who hadn't done so well.
The actual final itself was the first sort of domestic cup final I'd played in. We won the UEFA Cup, of course, but that was over 2 legs. So, but the first one, and in front of a lot of people at Hampden, half the stadium Celtic, half the stadium Rangers. It was just an incredible feeling.
Again, typical Old Firm Cup final. Both teams sort of jostling, trying to come into the ascendancy, and it was Rangers that hit the front.
Candy Fraser is there, Butcher's there, Durrant is there and scores! Durrant has scored for Rangers. 1-0 with exactly 17 minutes gone, and the referee will have to drag them down again. They're not supposed to go to the crowd, and the Rangers multitudes go into a mass hysteria.
We scored first, I think, and then Celtic equalised. When you play in Old Firm games, they're like roller coasters, really. You just, if you score, you're up, and then if you concede, you're down, and it's up and down sometimes. Or it can be flat, where it's really tense and stalemate and all that sort of thing. But there's generally a lot of goals in the Old Firm matches I played in.
And it looked as if the final was heading for extra time until, with 5 minutes to go, Rangers won a free kick on the right-hand side. The free kick was taken by Derek Ferguson, and Ferguson was superb that afternoon. Man of the match performance, and his delivery to the back post was heading towards Terry Butcher.
That was dramatically pulled down by Roy Aitken. He still swears that it wasn't a penalty, but I think it would have been an assault charge on Solihull Street. So it was good to have a hand in it. But as soon as David Cooper stepped up to take it, I knew he was going to score.
A vital moment in this game. I make it 5.5 minutes remaining of the Skull Cup final. Penalty to Rangers. 2-1. Done with the greatest simplicity by the man hoisted up by McCoy's, Davy Cooper.
My admiration for Davy Cooper. If Davy had been born 30 years later, he would have been a multi-millionaire. He was so good. When he stepped up and stuck that ball in the back of the net, I mean, that took something special to do that. And it was early in the days, and maybe it was a success that came a lot earlier than we had expected. I mean, I still expected to win the league. But there was question marks whether we'd win it or not. And I mean, I know you cannot guarantee anything, but that was a big step.
It is a massive when Walter Smith talks about just how important that Skull Cup victory is. Rangers need to get on the board. The League Cup, of course, has been a source of some joy for Rangers during those darker times of the early 80s, so it's not as if winning the Skull Cup was, a panacea, but it was important for this new regime to get off the mark, especially in an Old Firm Cup final. In a cup final of images, you have that one with Cooper being lifted by McCoy. These two Rangers men who know that something has changed and they're going to be part of it. And there's another one, Souness, who starts up in the main stand, but makes his way down to the dugout as the match goes on. And at the end, at the full-time whistle, he's not running around, he's not overly emotive. He just looks up, presumably to David Holmes, with one fist just kind of quietly raised. And it's a man in his Armani suit looking in complete control of the situation, and fans just bought into that. Rangers were on top of the league, by the way, and Rangers fans believed they're going to win the league.
I wasn't used to lifting trophies, and you got up as a captain, and I lifted it up, and I think I then walked down with the cup, because normally you pass it along the line, everybody holds it up and all gets a cheer. So I took it to myself and went over to the Rangers fans with the cup. So it was different for me, and it was the first domestic trophy I'd won as a player, and it meant a lot. It meant a lot. It was a real good feeling of saying to the world, my move has been justified, really, with what we've done.
Two games to go. It's nip and tuck. Rangers are going to Pittodrie to play Aberdeen, and Celtic were at home to Falkirk, who were battling against relegation. So there was probably an element of concern for the travelling support that day, and that was largely borne out by the fact that Rangers didn't have a great record at Pittodrie. The last time they'd won there in a league match was 1982. So if anything, there was probably concern that the advantage that Rangers had at that time could have been reduced, because I think the feeling would probably have been that Celtic would have comfortably dealt with Falkirk at home, whereas Rangers faced a sterner challenge at Pittodrie than what Celtic did.
We knew about the Rangers fans as well wanting tickets, because it could be the day we clinched the title, have that sort of tingly end of season sort of feel about it, chasing the trophy, the title. So I knew there'd be lots of Rangers fans, because Aberdeen fans were selling their tickets because they didn't have anything to play for.
There was thousands going. There were hundreds left outside. There were Rangers fans on three sides of the stadium. Of course, they hadn't won the league for 9 years. This was a big deal. I was living and working in London at the time, and this was being reported down south and on the news bulletins there and on the news shows, and anybody that's ever lived down south will tell you that they don't take a great interest in Scottish football, but Souness had garnered that interest, and they wanted to know how Rangers got on.
And Souness was sent off. He was sent off in that game and disappeared. We never saw him on the touchline after that.
One of the best memories I've ever had at playing for Rangers is that goal, because David Cooper was on the wing with the free kick. I go up to the edge of the box. Brian Irvin's marking me, I think, big Brian, and I've just nodded to Coops from about 30, 40 yards away. I just nodded to him and ran, because I could see a space, and Brian wasn't exactly really tight to me, And as soon as I made the run and the ball was struck, I knew it was in the right place. And I had to concentrate then on just getting a sort of redirection on the header, not pace on the header, but a redirection of it.
There's Cooper. There's Butcher. He scored. Butcher has scored for Rangers.
And although Brian Irvine equalised for Aberdeen just before half-time, Rangers held on to draw 1 each. Even at that point, as much as the draw would probably be considered at that venue with 10 men to be a good result, there was concern, because had Celtic won their game, then the advantage Rangers had at the top of the league would have been reduced and the title race would have went to the final day. But then the beach end at Pittodrie erupted, because those that had their transistor radios with them found out that Celtic hadn't beaten Falkirk. Celtic hadn't drawn with Falkirk. Celtic had actually lost to Falkirk. And in not only had Rangers secured a vital point at Pittodrie, that point actually clinched the league title for the first time in 9 years. And when the referee blew his final whistle, that 9 years of pain, that 9 years of hurt, that 9 years where the league trophy hadn't been at Ibrox, all ended.
75 for that generation was obviously quite similar, and 2021 would feel very much in there. But there was something more about that. It was the start of something bigger. We had no idea about the decade that was to follow, really, but there was a sense of it. The fans absolutely bought into that, because who else has got this ambition? Who else is going to buy the kind of players that we buy? And there will be more. And we'll get into the European Cup next year, which again is attractive to other English players. So it was more than just 1986-87 in isolation, a league championship. Even though the fans were starved of that for 9 years, this is just the start.
At the end of that first season, we had won the league, we had won in the cup, we had played 2 rounds in Europe. There's 42,000 people sitting in the seats. And that first year, we broke even. And it was everything I had wished for. And it was everything the supporter had wished for.